Thank you for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Carolyn Hausladen, who exhibited works from her series Roots of Identity at the Memorial Union Gallery at North Dakota State University. Roots of Identity explores the imagery we cultivate to express identity, culture, and origin stories. Through intricate and intimate drawings, Carolyn explores patterns and designs that have been passed through nature to a receptive society that then turns inspiration into tradition. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. So Carolyn, thank you so very much for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist. There are aspects of your work that are very recognizable, but the coloring and the patterning are sort of surreal. And I was wondering why the work is not sort of like a realistic forest scene.
I think part of that is just because that's been done so much. And as our, senior body of work, we want to really, I think all of us artists have wanted to push ourselves and try something different. And the faculty has encouraged us to try and find something new that at least we haven't done before.
And do the colors and the patterns have some sort of conceptual reasoning, or are they just simply sort of dreamlike, surreal, sort of?
Well, the patterns more so than the colors. I mean, the colors do have some meaning I'll get to in a second, but the patterns are very much based on a lot of research I've done into the history of patterns and the history of where we get different types of patterns, and a lot of that actually comes from nature, which then ties back into the nature imagery. So kind of trying to combine the more non-objective, or that's not the right word. We're trying to combine this not specifically nature imagery with very specifically nature imagery and kind of create that surrealness, I guess. And then the colors, I like happy colors, I guess. And I also, there's a lot of that in Scandinavian artwork, which I looked at a lot. The brighter colors when you live in the north and everything's gray all the time. You kind of want something bright.
And do you have a relationship with that?
So yeah, I'm from Minnesota, so I like a lot of Minnesotans have a significant amount of Scandinavian heritage.
Okay. The background in your work is noticeably absent. There is this sort of depth a little bit in your work of overlapping items, but there's this sort of non-space that exists. And I was wondering if you could talk about your decision to sort of exclude the definition of space within your work.
Right. So that was a combination of, again, as I was looking at the history of, patterns and stuff, a lot of that's on more decorative art. So it might be patterns painted onto a bowl or something. And in that context, there is this non-space, as well as looking at textiles, fabric, and wallpaper, and the non-space in that, and how even in those situations sometimes there can still be this, foreground and a background, and there's this sense of depth. So combining this idea of a pattern or something that might go on with then creating an actual space that you visually inhabit.
Okay. The 4 panels are part of one scene, but I read them sort of left to right, and there's sort of a difference in the coloring, from one side to the next. And I was wondering how the panels, even though they're part of the same scene, how they're different and how they're sort of the same. How am I sort of reading these items?
Yeah, so that's how I want people to read it, to look at it both as the larger context and then the individual panels, and then hopefully even deeper at the smaller details, the individual flowers and rocks and mushrooms and all that stuff. So as the process I had, I worked on the panels, I laid them out together as one piece, and then I kind of worked on them individually. But especially when I got to the coloring, I was working on them even more individually and breaking them up and not being as worried about having all the colors line up. So with part of that, a lot of that's just the visual, wanting things to flow visually. So just balancing out warm colors and cool colors and not having like a bunch of red in this area and then not having any in the other areas. Part of that's very technical, I guess.
The work is very detailed, right? I was wondering if there's like any little sort of like secret places, like in the work that we might not notice, that you were sort of like specifically.
I mean, hopefully like every part of the panel has some of that you can discover, and like this can be your favorite part. I don't really have like a specific part that's like was really like, oh, I'm gonna hide something in here or something. There's kind of a big like rock formation, or it's supposed to be reminiscent of rocks, kind of in between the far left panel and the second to left panel, and that for me I think was the most like interesting part to work on, because that's probably the most different from other like sketches and drawings I've done, and just the way that the rocks kind of formed together and all the different colors that ended up being in there, I think was probably the most like, I think that's the most interesting part.
Okay. As you said, there's a referential quality within the work to other cultures. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about one or two places where patterning or reference to like something very specific happened that was sort of like exciting for you.
Yeah, so as I've already talked a little bit about the Scandinavian heritage, and a specific type of it is rose mauling, which is Norwegian decorative painting. It's much more technical, and you can go on and on about that. But it's a specific type of painting that has a lot of like leaves and flowers type shapes and scrolling type shapes that are combined, to create these patterns. And so, especially in like the far left panel, in that kind of clump, there's a lot of like shapes, and the way that they're kind of like the grasses kind of go together, that is specifically drawn from rose mauling. And then I guess another area would be, there's kind of these, like circular, I mean, they're portrayed as flowers in my imagery, but they're drawn from a lot from mandalas, which is, I guess it's a type of more Eastern art that has like spiritual significance, and like the circle that kind of like grows outward, and then also more in like medieval times, especially in like Europe, there did the rose windows in the Catholic churches. Mm-hmm. And again, there's like this circular patterning and this religious significance that there's a whole other thing I think I need to go and explore there, that connection. Yeah. But that was something else in the work that I drew from.
Okay. Yeah. So at the end of our interview, we like to ask a few questions about sort of creative practice. And I was wondering what time of day you feel most creative?
I mean, I guess probably when I have the most inspiration, either like in the middle of the night, or like when I'm trying to get to sleep, which I think that's true for a lot of artists, or like in the middle of the afternoon if I'm doing something like driving, or where I'm like focusing on something but like half like a part of my brain is kind of free. And that's also when I'll get like inspiration. And then as far as when I actually like get work done, it really depends on the day.
Okay. Do you listen to music or anything like that while you're making work?
So it depends on the type of work I'm doing. If it's something that's like not super messy and it's not like super, like I'm not thinking about getting like every little like the shading on an eye right or something, I will sometimes like have a TV show on, usually something I've seen before that I don't really have to pay attention to. Otherwise, I listen to audiobooks a lot. I find that I listen to music some, but my mind tends to get like too far distracted from my work. So if I listen to an audiobook, it's kind of the right balance between like I'm focusing on my work, but I'm also listening to a story.
Okay. Is there anything that you're reading right now?
Like reading or listening to?
Well, I mean, either.
I go through audiobooks really fast, so kind of keeping up with them. I like to re-listen to things a lot, just kind of, I like historical fiction, whatever. And then as far as reading, I've been working on War and Peace for like 3 years.
Okay. Sounds about right. And then I guess my last question would be, what's next for you?
I will, graduating in a few weeks, and I will be moving back to the Twin Cities with my parents. So that'll be great. Actually, no, they're great. And then hopefully I want to continue making art, and then just pursuing working in the field of art, potentially designing fabrics or working in interior decorating, or just something where I can continue to be creative.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, I'd like to thank our guest, Carolyn, and I'd also like to thank you all for your time and your interest in the creative endeavors and the professional practice happening here at North Dakota State University. So for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.